Hi everyone, thank you very much. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr. Welcome to another classic movie review. This is my review of a Western from 1967, Hombre, starring one of my all-time favorite movie stars, the late great Paul Newman. This movie was directed by Martin Ritt. Two of my favorite Paul Newman flicks are actually The Long Hot Summer, of which Martin Ritt also directed, and this film right here. This movie was based on a book that came out in 1961 written by Elmore Leonard, whose works would go on to be made into films in the late 90s with movies like Jackie Brown, which was originally a book called Rum Punch, which Elmore Leonard wrote, that was adapted by Quentin Tarantino, one of my favorite Tarantino films, as well as the Steven Soderbergh 1998 film Out of Sight. And this isn't like a lot of westerns. This is more of a revisionist western compared to a lot of the more traditional westerns of the 50s and early 60s. When we meet our main protagonist, John Russell, played by Paul Newman at the beginning of the movie, we see that he's really adopted the ways of the Apache, even though he kind of dresses like a white man, but still is the kind of guy that looks out for his own people and mainly himself. And so he doesn't come off as the heroic type that you see in a lot of other Western films of this period. And Paul Newman is very good in the part of John Russell. He really doesn't have tons of dialogue in this movie. The dialogue for Paul Newman's character is kept at a minimum, with him using most of his facial expressions and mainly his eyes to convey a lot of emotion, of which he does and is excellent at it as well. In the beginning of the film, he learns of an inheritance when somebody in his past passes away and leaves him a house. And he doesn't want the house, he just wants to sell it, and so he does. But the people that are living there, which is the person that is kind of maintaining and running this house, which is a boarding house, ends up having to leave, as well as its inhabitants. And so he arranges to get on a stagecoach and go somewhere else. And because the people that are staying in the house have nowhere else to go, they basically are going to ride in the same coach. Of the 8 people going on this stagecoach ride, including Paul Newman's character John Russell, you also have a couple of married couples, one being the characters of Doris and Billy, an unhappily married couple, a younger couple. We also have an older couple, Professor Faber and his wife Audrey. We have a seedy character played by Richard Boone in the role of Cicero Grimes. And we also have the caretaker of the boarding home, Jessie, a very strong and independent woman played by Diane Salento. And you also have Martin Balsam, who a lot of people might remember as the detective in Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 classic Psycho. And he was also one of the jurors in 12 Angry Men. Martin Balsam plays the stagecoach driver in the film, and he's kind of a friend to the Paul Newman character. His name is Henry Mendez. He plays a Mexican guy, and a lot of Latino people are going to get annoyed or, I think, a little bit offended whenever they see a Latino person being portrayed by a white actor. But if the actor does a good job and if the accent sounds pretty good, at least it does for me in this movie, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. And I've always enjoyed Martin Balsam whenever he popped up in a movie back in the day. He's one of my favorite character actors. During the early part of this journey on the stagecoach, we learn a little bit about each of the characters through their conversation with each other as they kind of try to break a little bit of the tension of the close quarters involving everybody sitting so close together and everything. And it's revealed through the conversation that Professor Favor is somebody that worked with Indian affairs in the past, and he's somebody that has profited quite a bit off of the suffering of others. And it's also revealed through the conversation that John Russell is somebody that has quite a bit of sympathy for their plight, as he was once somebody that lived with them and ate with them and suffered with them. And when everybody kind of finds this out, eventually they request to the driver that they ask him to sit outside of the coach and sit up front with the driver. Newman's character does come off a bit resentful and offended at the idea of having to sit outside up top with the driver because, it's cold out there and everything. But ultimately, he does understand because he understands the nature of these people. And so he just kind of goes with it because he doesn't want to cause any more problems. On top of that, there's already enough tension with the character of Cicero Grimes, who is very crude with the people in there, especially the women. And whenever he does talk, it's always kind of offensive and off-putting towards people, making things all the more uncomfortable given that they are sitting so closely together and they have no choice but to converse with them every now and then. And so as they continue on this journey, every now and then they have to stop. And there is a moment where they stop where things get really tense really quickly when a few gunmen pop out of nowhere and they're there to rob the character of Professor Faber because they know that he has quite a bit of money on him. This is the thing that sets this movie apart from a lot of the westerns from this period, because from here on out, it doesn't just become a mere shoot 'em up action adventure kind of western out in the blazing sun, out in the elements, with a lack of water, and so they're being held at gunpoint now, and now they have to survive not just the heat and everything, but these gunmen that are basically robbing them and then leaving them for dead and taking one of the women with them as hostage. For fans of the old NBC classic Western TV show Bonanza, you'll recognize the actor that played Candy Candidate on that show, actor David Canary, who plays one of the gunmen in this movie that holds everybody up at gunpoint. And there's a scene early in the movie where he comes across John Russell's character before he gets his haircut, and so later on, he has a feeling like he's seen him before, and then there's a nice altercation there, and it's a nice little payoff moment for people that enjoy a good little shoot 'em up kind of moment in their westerns. Because of the situation that everybody is in this movie, for the most part, this feels more like a suspense thriller that just happens to take place in the Old West. And it's very character driven, very well written, and because there is that moment earlier where there was that bit of resentment towards Paul Newman's character, and now everybody is kind of looking to him because he's the one that knows how to use that Winchester rifle really well. There's a bit of hesitation on his part to want to help everybody since they did kind of do him dirty earlier in the movie. We do get those classic standoff moments that a lot of westerns are famously known for, and towards the end, all our characters are cornered in a place where they have no choice but to try and deal with their robbers, and there are those moments where every now and then John Russell has to make a choice of what he's going to do in terms of act heroic or just let everybody kind of stay on the sidelines and whatever happens to them is going to happen to them. And you do see his character go through this kind of moral dilemma throughout the movie when it comes to how he has to deal with them. I don't want to give away too much in terms of the outcome of the events throughout the movie because I don't want to ruin it for anybody, seeing as how this movie will work a lot better, seeing as it is a suspenseful kind of film. But this is a movie that I highly recommend anybody that's into westerns or movies about tense situations to check out. And if you are a Paul Newman fan but you haven't seen this movie, if you enjoy a good suspense movie, and if you enjoy a good western, and if all of that criteria interests you, I highly encourage you to check this movie out. The name of the film is Hombre, came out in 1967, and to me this is a classic Paul Newman film. This is one of those movies that I'm not sure if it's iconic or if it was very popular when it came out. I came across this movie pretty late in my life, but when I did see it, it became one of my favorites instantly. This is a movie that I give 3.5 stars. This is a movie that I came across completely by accident on TV not that long ago, and then later on came across it again on streaming, so I know it is on some streaming platforms, but if you're having trouble finding it, have a look at it on DVD if you want. This is my copy of the DVD. As you can see, that is Paul Newman there, back in the late 60s, 67 to be exact, and you can see a bunch of guys on horses back here, pretty dangerous looking guys. Thank you all very much for watching this classic movie review. I very much appreciate it. If you're a new viewer and if you're into classic films, hit the bell, become a subscriber. For the most part, I talk about the classics. Every now and then I'll talk about a new movie, but for the most part, I'm completely dedicated to talking about the classics. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you very much for your support. I very much appreciate you. And if you want to comment, share, give a like, it really helps me out. Thank you very much for your time. Take care of each other. God bless and peace out.